Today I want to continue with the classics that begins, in motion all parts of the body must be light, nimble, and strung together. The chi should be excited and the spirit internally gathered. Let the postures be without breaks or holes, hollows or protuberances, continuities and discontinuities of form. That's the first part of the first part. I find the next three in this book, the next three paragraphs, to be instructional. So it talks about it's a replication, a duplication of the first line, in motion all parts of the body, light, nimble, and strung together. To do that, you have to root the movement in the foot. The movement begins in the foot, it goes to the leg, it goes to the hip, and then it goes to the waist, and then it goes to the hand. Right. So that's what that paragraph is telling us, how to approach making our body one unit without breaks and holes. It then goes on and says, the feet, the legs, and the waist must act together simultaneously so that while stepping forward or stepping back, the advantageous position can be maintained. That's a lot. That's a big requirement. It's impossible. I would say it's impossible to understand these two paragraphs without prolonged study of Tuisho. When asked once how important is Tuisho, Chen Nanchang answered, it's extremely important. You can't go past a certain point without it. That's addressed later. He addresses that later in this same volume of material. So the feet, legs, and the waist must act together simultaneously. There's one, I'll only talk about two dimensions. There's one counterclockwise circle, and it has three tangents. One goes off this way, one goes off this way, and one goes off this way. So the feet, the legs, and the waist act together simultaneously. So whether you move forward or step back, or you go left or you go right, you're never out of sync with your partner, whoever that might be. So that at first seems self-explanatory, but the ability to maintain the stability in the movement when the changes come so quickly is not one that's easily obtained. And then it further goes and says, if you haven't gotten that and the timing and the position are not correct, seek the defect in the legs and the waist. The waist is, it never defines what the waist is. I have seen Tai Chi styles that actually torque the spine by keeping the hips facing the direction of the feet and then torquing the spine. For me, I'm in Argentina now, the waist is defined by two joints where the pelvis and the leg meet, working in connection with the sacrum. The sacrum is always heavy and sinking down, and the hip joints where the leg and the pelvis are always as in a sitting position. The problem is we are our own chairs. So if the timing and the position aren't correct, we have to find that fault in the regulation of our legs and our pelvis, our hips, and our sacrum. And when we become level, that's the function of the hips, and plumb, that's the function of the sacrum. When we maintain level and plumb, then as moving, the advantageous position can be maintained. So if the timing and position are not correct, the body becomes disordered and seek the defect in the legs and the waist. And then what we have here, up and down, front or back, left or right, are all the same. We speak horizontally. Up or down automatically creates two. Left or right, front and back, automatically connects two, makes two. But from nothing, moving, let's take just two directions, up, down. If we could speak vertically, we would pronounce those words at the same time. I can't do that. But this is what happens. So there's not an up and a down, there's an up, down. Later in the classics, it talks about the two primordial powers. The up belongs to yang and the bottom belongs to yin. That can't be violated. It can be worked with. You can take a balloon and fill it with some sort of gas that's lighter than air and take advantage of the atmosphere and ride around and have some sort of experience. Or you can throw a rock off of a heavy rock off a building and you're attached to it. Once that rock is gone, you're down. There's nothing you can do about it. Once you let go of that helium balloon, it goes up. There's nothing that, there's one direction. This way, this way, this way. And if you think of it as a circle, it will always be one direction. But if you think about it as a sphere, as we are spheres, there's only one direction. To me, this is a very important paragraph. And then the next one is even more important because it says these are all mind and not external. So what's so important I found in Tai Chi is our imagination, and not in a kind of frivolous way, but a way of approaching something that doesn't exist. We have to create it from nothing. Later in the classic it says that. It also says suddenly appear, suddenly disappear. So we'll get to that part later. This says, these are all mind and not external. And anything, okay, my very first class with Tam, I walked in and it was his advanced class. I didn't know that, and he didn't know that I didn't know the short form. I had learned the long form so that I could fake it pretty well until we got to Fair Ladies, where I was completely lost. And he asked, he had been away touring, teaching around the country, and he came back in the first class. The first thing he asked, what's the first thing that moves? in Tai Chi, what's the first thing that moves? And then he looks at me and he says, I don't expect you to know because this is your first day. And then he asked each of the other 5 people that were there, and they all gave a wrong answer. I don't remember what they were, but none of them were. What he said next was the mind. So my very first lesson with him was the mind moves before the body. Maybe the body's not even the second thing that moves, but the mind is the first thing to move. So it tells us that, and the people that put this back together, Ben Lowe, Martin and Susan Flo and Robert Amaker, they laid out the book in such a way that gives this one line its own importance. It's surrounded by emptiness on the top and emptiness on the bottom. It stands alone. So therefore, it's really, really important. These are all mind, not externals. And then it goes, it's a repetition. If there is up, then there is down. If there is left, then there is right. If there is forward, then there are backwards. There is left and right. That essentially just repeats what it said before it got to this line where it said up or down, front or back, left or right. These are all the same. It's a repetition of the same thing. And this next line is, I'll just read it, and you can tell me what it is, or maybe you'll tell yourself. If the mind wants, well, let me see what it says. If the mind wants to move up, it contains at the same time the downward direction. So in pushing hands, you can't think of up or down. Up and down define each other, and the energy of a push in pushing hands doesn't go in a single direction. It goes in a single direction, but followed by a huge wake. And this this line, what is it? At the same time, it contains the downward idea. That's most easily understood, I believe, in the posture push. And the trigram for push is a yang line at the bottom, a yin line in the middle, and a yang line on top. Yin encased in yang. In pushing, you go forward. But what do you do when you counter resistance? You have to go back with that resistance. But if you don't continue going forward at the same time you're going backwards, you're not going to go and have an effortless push. This is, I believe this is fundamental. Well, of course it's fundamental. It's in the classics. Everything in the classics is fundamental. What I'm trying to get is to how to approach reading something that's overwhelming in its depth, and without knowing anything, it's, I mean, for some people it's nice poetry, but I mean, it is that. But it has a meaning that grows with our participation in the art. And so it says, if the mind wants to go up at the same time, it has to have the downward idea. And that's advance, receive the resistance, but don't stop advancing. So the receiving and the advancing happens at the same time. Up, forward, and backwards at the same time. It's only one. And then it talks again about by alternating the force of pushing and pulling, the root is severed and the object is quickly toppled without a doubt. This describes the technique of Qigong, which I was just talking about. And you use the energy of the ocean. And if you go to the ocean and you watch the waves coming in, but at the same time, smaller waves are going out. And the waves coming in, they don't fight with the waves going out, but they receive it and they all go forward together. And that's the idea that's being expressed here by alternating the force of pulling and pushing. The object is you cut off the root, and then it's very easy to throw it away. So maybe I'll stop there. I've got several more pages of this. Yes, I've got several more pages of this entry into the classics, but that's enough for now. So thank you.